It was fun on Return of the King for me in the sense that I was back in the cutting room with Jamie, who I cut all my earlier films with.
I've had a wonderful 15 years working with Peter. I mean, it's from on Bad Taste days. So when I first met up with him when he was a 25-year-old, and we're sort of having a lot of fun in the cutting room putting together that movie.
Jamie cut Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead and Heavenly Creatures and Frighteners, and he's certainly a very good guy to have when you're under pressure because he never loses it. He's always very calm and very considered.
Who would have ever thought that we'd actually be working on such a film like The Lord of the Rings? I mean, we were making splatter movies, up until like a few years before that.
Because this was the most gruelling and intensive and difficult of the 3 films to cut, it was probably useful for me to be back with the guy that I'd worked with, because you have that good rapport with each other.
Yeah, that's right. So using this as the first shot.
Yeah, but we come back to it again, so we use it twice.
The original concept was to edit the 3 films, and when we first started in the trilogy, it's 98 when we're busy doing the budgeting and sort of deciding how we're going to do the movie. But it came pretty obvious it was going to be pretty hard to do it that way.
This is a very complicated movie times 3, all at once. This is going to be the hardest thing I ever do in my life, and I will never. I've actually had enough really of these complicated things. My next movie is going to be very simple. Whatever it is, it will be as simple as hell.
It was the time then for me to find other editors and just do one of them. We had 2 good editors. John Gilbert was good. Editor Mike Horton was good for Two Towers.
I was very aware when I finished Two Towers that while it was a completion of a job for me, it certainly wasn't for the film, if you see it as a 9-hour piece, and I do. And so you do get a sense of handing over the baton to the new cutting team.
Just to keep an eye on us.
And go, there we are, put more icing on the cake.
This is the first time that I've actually done any cutting work for Pete now since 1995, when we're cutting the Frighteners. I've been lazing around, I've been waiting for this to happen.
Jamie, without Avid skills, needed somebody to operate the Avid. So I literally became Jamie's hands. It's like a very privileged position because I had my fingers on this wonderful footage that any editor in the world would have wanted to be on. On film 3, there was about 2 million feet of film shot. That's a hell of a lot of footage.
Obviously, we looked at all the dailies.
Action, Sean!
And then we also did a sort of an assembly edit in a long-form version of about 4.5 hours. Those 3 shots, move them up after Gandhi, and then go back to Ewan.
The next stage was to try and get it down to size, obviously.
Because the plan was to have a 3-hour cut like the other movies to prove that we'd actually got the story was there and we had a film.
And so we shaved off and we hacked and we slashed and we burnt.
So all the fat had gone, it was really right down to the tightest we could get it. It was sort of very clunky in the visual look of it, but the emotion was sort of so strong. Pete was pretty, it gave him a good feel.
The first screening that ever really happened of Return of the King was in New Zealand. I had it on videotape at the house. Elijah Wood, Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd had come down to New Zealand, and they just came out with it and said, so can we look at Return of the King?
We kind of asked him, we said, do you think it would be okay if we saw the cut that you have right now of Return of the King? And he's like, yeah.
And I was really wanting to say no. I was wanting to say, listen, guys, let me just do a bit of work on it before I show it to you. But I thought, you know what, if seeing the Return of the King makes this something special for them, then I'm happy to do that. So anyway, I said, okay, come around to the house tomorrow at 10 o'clock and I'll stick it on. And it's just a crappy tape off the Avid, which looks like the quality is terrible. And there's not one completed visual effects shot in the film. And I thought, oh, God, this is going to be terrible.
The last pages are for you, sir. By the end of the movie, we were just in bits.
We were all crying. Pete was crying.
I mean, we were absolutely blown away.
I remember being told, like, this Doublehead Fine Cut was so good, you could, it was said glibly, but could almost be released.
Viewing it with people who are intimately involved in the film gives you quite a misleading sense of exactly what you're dealing with, because you've then got to look at it in the cold light of day and say, okay, what is somebody who's not that attached to the movie going to actually make of all of this? And you realise you had a lot of work to do.
And I think although Peter honestly believed early in post on Return of the King that, oh yeah, film's in great shape, it was always the strongest of the scripts, but ultimately this really was the last hurrah, this was the last swing for the fence, and then I think he came to believe that why settle for merely very good for the last film when you could have something so much better. And I think that's what launched the whole kind of torturous editing process of all the movies.
It was ultimately harder and more grueling and more difficult than the post-production on Two Towers, which I would have thought was impossible because that film was a bloody nightmare. But this one turned out to be even worse. The structure, the shape, the momentum, the pacing, the storytelling, the intercutting between storylines. Because, of course, on Fellowship we had one narrative. It was a very linear movie. Two Towers sort of split into 3 storylines. And, of course, in this movie we really have 5. We have the Pippin Gandalf story, you have the Merry Theoden Eowyn story, you've got Elrond and Arwen, you have Aragorn with Legolas and Gimli, and of course you have Frodo, Sam and Gollum. It was big.
Then we started inheriting these damn scenes from film 2.
We had an embarrassment of riches on Return of the King. We did have these great, wonderful scenes that didn't make it into the other films that we had filmed for them. For example, the scene of Arwen going off to the Greyhaven, seeing an image of her son and returning to confront her father. And we put it in Two Towers, but that just slowed the story down, whereas in Return of the King, it plays perfectly.
If I leave him now, I will regret it forever.
We also had the demise of Saruman.
The death of Saruman was supposed to wrap out the Two Towers. I think a lot of people know that now.
And Peter felt, that's sort of anticlimactic. We've already had this amazing battle at Helm's Deep. We can't really afford to go back to Isengard and see what happens to Saruman.
We cast it off. No, we gave it to picture 3.
I remember Mike heaving a sigh of relief and sort of saying, "Hey, Jamie, I've got another scene for you can use for film 3.
I was thrilled that they were bringing me into the 3rd film. I was supposed to end my presence on Middle-earth at the end of the 2nd film. And then they decided that the character was so dominant and so important and so powerful that they were going to bring him into the 3rd.
I thought, oh no, we're stuck with it. How are we going to get in this? And I said to Peter, we can't put the scene in film 3. It's never going to work in film 3. It's the wrong way to start a film 3. He said, oh, no, we'll just do some new lines in the pickup sheet. We're going to pick up some more stuff.
We rewrote a few lines of dialogue that would function more as the beginning of a film. We thought, okay, if it's going to be at the beginning of our movie, let's make it feel like a beginning, not an ending.
So you have come here for information? I have some for you.
We tried our best. We really gave it our best shot.
Rewrites of it, reshoots.
So I did the entire scene and then did it again. And I certainly ADR'd it 4 times.
We must have cut the scene about 20 times, and we ended up with all these different cuts.
It's one of the most crucial scenes in the entire story.
If you have to struggle and struggle and struggle over a scene, it's probably because it's not the right scene for the film as a whole.
Basically, it came down to the fact that it wasn't working, and we just had to take it out.
I was very disappointed. I was shocked, I was disappointed, I was hurt, and I can't understand why they did what they did.
We just felt that the opening of the film wasn't zipping into our Return of the King storyline as quickly as we wanted it to.
To kill off your film 2 villain in the beginning of film 3 was probably not the most efficient storytelling one could conceive of.
And we just came up with the idea at that point. We said, well, there is a way that we could go to Isengard and get the Palantir and not have to have the very lengthy scene with Saruman.
So we came up with a shot of the Palantir just sort of glowing in the water like it had fallen somewhere during the process of the downfall of Isengard, and that's what caught Pippin's eye.
It was a tough decision to make. It was only tough. It wasn't tough for me. It wasn't tough because of the film. Because I think the film immediately got better. But obviously it was tough because it was going to mean that Chris was going to get the scene taken out.
I'm just really glad that we're getting to see it in the extended cut because it's a great sequence.
It's always painful to cut things out, and so therefore it's kind of neat and to put things back in. It's fun.
Although we will top it with the extended DVD.
With the extended DVD.
That's the only thing that's going to top what we've just seen, isn't it?
Yes, everything. Yes, so much better. I'm in it for 7 minutes, but it's unforgettable. The whole film goes downhill after that.
Okay, cheers.
I have an enormous sense of pride at having been a part of this. It was my dream when I read the books. So dreams sometimes do come true.
And now he's back into that sequence, and the extended cut really completes, an 11.5-hour journey of this Lord of the Rings. He is now there and will always be there.
There are some things that you drop that you really love. They take away from the progress of the story.
And
Action!
We had filmed the Gollum derivation story, the Smeagol-Deagle story, thinking that it would be a great piece for film too, that's what it was written for.
And it was going to happen in the Dead Marshes when Frodo says he used to be a hobbit once. Your name was Smeagol, and he looks up and he says, Smeagol. And then it pushed in, and then it pulled back on Smeagol's face.
But in pacing the movie, we found it didn't really fit.
We then had a decision, as we do we put the scene back in the extended cut of Two Towers? And I remember saying to Fran, I said, you know what, we could actually save it for Return of the King.
Where can we put that into film 3? You couldn't put it in the middle somewhere because there's no real reason to flash back. It would have really sort of disrupted the storyline.
Peter comes in to work on the scene and he says, let's put it at the front of the film. Right.
It would be interesting, it would be unexpected, it would be, people would be expecting another Balrog fight and they'd get this.
Opening titles, Lord of the Rings, da-da-da-da-da-da, One Little Worm. Peter was delighted. What a wonderful way to start film 3. That bloody worm on the hook.
To open the film on a scene which is all about the ring just felt like the bookends is what we needed. Suddenly it was just one of those little moments where you think, this is feeling like a really great idea.
Precious.
One of the things that happens when you're editing is you sometimes decide that you need shots that you don't have. And that's okay if you're editing the film before you shoot pickups, because obviously the whole point of a pickup shoot is that you can grab those bits and pieces that you realise you need during the editorial process. It's a little bit more of a problem if it happens after you've done your pickups, because there ain't no more film crews around, the cameras have all been packed away, the actors aren't around, you're done.
Au revoir.
And you suddenly realise, oh God, we need this or this. And it happened a couple of times during Return of the King.
There was a couple of shots of the Harad jumping out of the things on top of the Mamakill.
The scene with Legolas fighting the Haradrim, he climbs up the Mamakill and he's got to grab these guys out of the tower and they're charging at him. And we'd shot some stuff with Orlando when he came out for pickups, and I was just concentrating on filming shots of him. And what I'd never done is I'd never shot any close-ups of Harad jumping out of the tower with spears.
And Peter had kept saying, I'll get you the shot, I'll show you what I want, I'll get you the shots for this. Any excuse, and he'll pick up a camera and shoot something.
And I said, look, Jamie, can you just grab a spear? And he said, well, we don't have a spear in the house. And I said, well, we've got a broom, haven't we? Grab a broom.
Threw a broomstick in my hands. You can hold this as a spear. And I'd be doing these jumps out through the front door with my broomstick. Just about every time I'd get jammed in the door or I'd get caught and I'd have to jump down towards him. I don't know how many takes of this, it all looked the same because I'm not a very good actor.
And we cut that stuff into the movie, sent that back to New Zealand, and then they were able to use it as a guide and film the real Harad doing it for these last couple of shots.
I'm surprised they didn't just leave me in there and sort of rotoscope out the door, really. I mean, I would have made a good Harad.
Definitely an Oscar nomination.
And there was another situation where we were cutting the scene with Gollum, which is outside Shelob's tunnel, and we decided that we wanted to change the nature of the scene.
I mean, it was all that sort of tugging and going to and fro with this ring idea. Frodo wanted to destroy it, but Gollum didn't want him to destroy it.
We wanted to emphasise much more Gollum's reaction to the fact that the ring is going to get destroyed. We felt this was a really important moment. And we thought, you know what, we don't have those Gollum reactions. We don't have him really processing the fact that this ring is going to be destroyed. Is that something he wants to happen? What's his feeling about it?
Peter needed to do something for that to explain what he wanted. So it was hilarious. One day we actually got Andy came out to visit us, and we said, "Oh, Andy, while you're here,"
Pete says, "We want to shoot this. Very important connected moment between you and Frodo." Right, okay, let's just do it. Okay, so get down on the carpet, and this was in his house.
I think just more addict torment kind of at the beginning, you know. It's a bit like, not this time, it's mine, you know, it's a clarification. Okay, and action.
Got away today, precious. Not this time.
And I just thought, this is so typical of Lord of the Rings. 1 minute you're on the top of Ruapeu or up a volcano or in the middle of the most extreme wilderness, and then you're shooting the same scene on a velour carpet months after the finish of filming. I'm thinking, I haven't even had a coffee yet, you know.
I just rolled and I got him to do various things with his face and looking.
We used that, put that into the Avid and cut those bits in, and we sent that back to New Zealand. That caused quite a lot of laughter back there.
Wait a minute, precious. Not this time. Not this time.
I have to destroy it, Smeagol. I have to destroy it for both our sakes.
That's movie magic.
You know, we cut this movie very much out of sequence. Occasionally I would just edit one story for a while, so I'd say to Jamie, you know, let's just concentrate on Frodo and Sam for a period of time. And so I wouldn't even think about where we were cutting to another story or how we were cutting to another story. I'd simply just cut scenes with Frodo and Sam, just move from scene to scene to scene to scene. And then we might go and spend a bit of time at Minas Tirith for a while and do some scenes with Gandalf and Pippin and Denethor and work through that. And, you know, I was starting to realise that unless I dropped everything and really started to put a concentrated 2 or 3 weeks worth of work into the end of the film, that I was going to really squash that. It was going to get put into the last few days of cutting, and I was going to rush through the climax. And I just dropped everything and just started to really focus on editing that sequence. And I was pleased that we did that, because we gave it the time it needed. From the time that Frodo and Sam are in Mordor, when Aragorn and his army are arriving at the Black Gates, that was going to demand a lot of editorial concentration to get that intercutting right, because you're intercutting between the slopes of Mount Doom and the crack of Doom itself with the battle that's happening at the Black Gates, and you want that cross-cutting to be really precise and to feel right.
Bring all those pieces together so that it felt like one scene.
You know, call it the last 45 minutes of the film, really. It's the most critical part of the movie. And it became apparent to us that we had to reduce the length of the battle at the Black Gates and really emphasise the Crack of Doom and make that the focus, because it is the focus, obviously. Frodo has finally reached the point that he can destroy this ring.
We want to make more of it than what we started off with.
We were originally going to have the ring topple into the lava, falling with Gollum, and we were going to just stay with the ring, and it was going to be sitting there sizzling for a moment or two and then melting, and then everything was going to collapse and be destroyed. And then we'd come back into the volcano and we'd see Sam running over, looking down, seeing Frodo hanging there and pulling him up. So it was a rescue and they're out the door.
Originally it sank fairly quickly. Gollum disappeared and then the ring would sink.
We thought, well, that's not very good. We need to stretch that out a bit more. We'd gone through a whole trilogy, a whole 3 movies. Couldn't just have it sort of happening like that, you know, you had to sort of milk it a bit.
We thought of a much more interesting way to do it during post-production, and this is a good example of how editing is a whole other creative tool that you can use to layer different ideas that you never had before. By having the ring land there, nothing happens to it.
And cutting back to it.
Have the lettering reappear. The voice of the ring is kind of subliminally calling out.
Frodo's about to let go and Sam's saying, don't. No!
For Frodo to be making that decision, as you can see in his eyes, some of the performances were great in Frodo's eyes there, that was he going to let go or wasn't he, you know? And
then you go back to the ring and it's sitting there and nothing's happening to it, it's floating on the lava.
And so we just stretched out that moment by intercutting it 2 or 3 times.
So you're actually having these 2 bits of tension going side by side. The ring melts, destruction happens. Frodo, you know, is grabbing Sam's hand.
And if Gandalf and Aragorn and all those people that are coming together felt like it was one scene, even though you're in different locations.
It maximises the tension rather than sort of just doing it in a more perfunctory type of way.
It's one of those cinematic things that you look for in the cutting room, eh? Those lovely times when you can bring the emotion of one scene and draw the emotion of another with it and bring them together.
Glad to be with you, Samwise Gamgee. Here at the end of all things.
That 4.5 years of being on Rings was a great time in my life. what I learnt was absolutely immense in terms of teamwork.
It's very important to get a team that all work very well together, and we have a fantastic team. I really think they really deserve a few drinks. They've done a wonderful job, and I'd have them on any other movie. I'd never ever would have imagined being where we are now when I first met up with Pete.
I just say to Peter tonight that it's hard to believe that here we are here tonight, and I met up with him 15 years ago doing Bad Taste. And thought, God, this guy's got a bit of talent, got to move him along. And so we had a lot of fun making those movies, and it's fantastic to receive this award tonight.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, who would have ever thought? I've been very lucky to have been continue working, cutting his movies. He could have easily got other editors to have worked with him. I mean, he didn't have to stay with me, but we had a pretty good relationship, worked quite well together. Well, it's a jolly good show. Thank you, everyone.
I think it's very appropriate. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's very, very, very special.
Oh. Been a fun 6 years. It's just fantastic that we're still working together and having a lot of fun making movies.
We could keep you going for another year, couldn't we?
No.